asking you, I'm pleading with you to spare my daughter's life.
All right, as to count one, the verdict or the sentence is we, the jury, find that the defendant should be sentenced to life imprisonment without parole. As to count two, the sentence is we, the jury, find the defendant should be sentenced to life imprisonment without parole.
On the evening of November 29th, 2009, a man came home from work to a nightmare. At the 700 block of Old Square Court in Ridgeland, Mississippi, he found his fiancée lying in a pool of blood. She wasn't moving. He tried again and again to wake her up, but nothing worked. In a panic, he rushed to a neighbor instead of calling the police. However, another neighbor, sensing foul play, decided to call the police. Help was on the way, but it was already too late. When police arrived, they found 27-year-old Avis Marie Banks, a pregnant teacher, lifeless in the arms of her heartbroken fiancé. At first, all eyes were on him. Something didn't feel right, but as detectives dug deeper, a new name surfaced. A woman who had been secretly involved with Avis's fiancé. She wasn't just a side chick, she was jealous, angry, and just found out Avis was pregnant, and that changed everything. This is the sad story of Avis Marie Banks. Avis Marie Banks was born on August 18, 1979, in Vicksburg, Mississippi. She grew up in a small, close-knit home filled with love and strong values. Her parents, Frederick and Deborah, taught her to work hard, stay kind, and always do her best. From a young age, Avis stood out. She wasn't loud or the center of attention. She was quiet, calm, and full of love. Everyone who met her could feel her gentle spirit. School was important to Avis. She always tried her hardest, and even one small mistake felt like a big deal to her. Once, she came home with all A's and one B, and she cried. That's how much she cared. She wanted to be her best in everything she did. But Avis wasn't just about grades. She loved deeply. She cared for her family, her friends, and even her neighbors. If someone needed help, she was there. Her heart was as big as her dreams. At Warren Central High School, Avis stayed focused. While others went out, she stayed home with her books. She was a true bookworm, always carrying a novel no matter where she went. But she also loved babies. She had a gift for caring for them, holding them, calming them, making them smile. It came naturally to her. She already knew then she wanted to work with children and one day have a family of her own. After high school, Avis went to Hines Community College, then Alcorn State University. She studied child development, staying true to her passion. Even away from home, she stayed grounded. No parties, no distractions, just focus. She graduated with honors and became the first in her family to earn a college degree. Her parents were proud. But Avis had her eyes set on something even bigger. She dreamed of opening her own daycare. She wanted to help low-income families offering care for children under 2. Some spots she even wanted to make free. It wasn't just about business, it was about giving back. She knew how much her parents had sacrificed, and she wanted to make life easier for them and others. She got a job as an assistant director at a local daycare, learning all she could. She planned to get a master's degree too. Life was moving forward, step by step. Avis was building her future with love, patience, and quiet strength. But as everything seemed to be falling into place, something was coming. Something that would change everything. One evening in early 2004, Avis and her sister headed to their local gym, just another evening in their usual routine. But that night would change her life. A man named Kenyon Pittman introduced himself. He was 29, charming, and shared an instant spark with Avis. They quickly discovered a lot in common. Both had attended Alcorn State University, both were passionate about children, and both were committed to fitness and education. By the end of their conversation, Avis couldn't hide her excitement. From that point on, she couldn't stop talking about Kenyon. He wasn't flashy, but he was kind, ambitious, and supportive, the kind of man who saw Avis for who she truly was. To Avis, he was everything, and to Kenyon, she was his world.
He did mention the fact that she was attractive. She kind of blushed and giggled. Well, they talked for a little while and they exchanged numbers. I think what attracted Avis to Keon was his charm.
When he met her parents, Frederick and Deborah, he made a strong impression. A college graduate and school teacher, respectful and driven. He checked every box. Her family was overjoyed, believing Kenyon was the perfect match. Even her father, Frederick, grew to see him as the son he never had. After 3 years of dating, they took the next big step. Kenyon landed a teaching and coaching position in Jackson, Mississippi, and the couple moved in together. Avis found work at a local daycare, putting her dream of owning one on hold for now. In 2005, they bought a cozy home in Ridgeland. Kenyon picked up a second job bartending to help with expenses. Life seemed to be unfolding exactly as planned. Then, in August 2006, the couple would receive one piece of news that would shift their world. Avis was pregnant. This news brought joy and a touch of surprise. Although unplanned, both were excited. The pregnancy nudged them toward marriage, especially under pressure from her parents. And it wasn't long until Kenyon made the decision to finally seal their lives together. Kenyon proposed, and the couple set a wedding date for mid-January, hoping to marry before her baby bump became too noticeable. They were building a future together, in love, and with a baby boy on the way.
Avis was very happy. She was ready to go out and start buying clothes and toys. We were looking forward to our children growing up together and having the bond and the relationship that she and I had.
But while things looked perfect on the surface, the holidays would reveal the first of their relationship. During Thanksgiving of 2006, spirits were high when they arrived at Avis's parents' home, excited to celebrate and decorate for Christmas. But not long into the visit, a phone call interrupted the moment. Kenyon stepped aside to take the call, pacing the room and sounding uneasy. When pressed, he brushed it off as an issue with his mother. But Frederick and Deborah couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. His nervous energy didn't match the story he gave. They exchanged glances, wondering silently if they were missing something. They chose not to press the issue. After all, Avis was happy and deeply in love, but their parental instincts buzzed beneath the surface. There was a tension they couldn't name, something unspoken. And while they didn't want to interfere, a quiet dread settled in the back of their minds. Then came small, barely noticeable changes. Kenyon seemed more distracted. He spent longer hours bartending, coming home late, and avoiding certain conversations. Avis chalked it up to stress and preparing for fatherhood. She trusted him completely, but those closest to her began to notice her growing unease. Behind closed doors, Kenyon was hiding something that had the potential to destroy everything they had built. The couple had been a picture of harmony, but that picture was beginning to crack. And the closer they got to their wedding day, the more unstable their foundation became. No one knew it then, but this wasn't just pre-wedding jitters. It was the beginning of a storm, one that would change the course of Avis's life forever. On Wednesday, November 29, 2009, Avis received a call from Kenyon at 5:12 p.m. He told her that he was on his way to basketball practice and would be home later. Avis had just finished work by 5:15 p.m. and by 5:36 p.m., she called Kenyon to ask about their dinner plans. Kenyon assured her that he would take care of everything. Everything seemed fine, so Avis drove back home, as she usually did. Once she arrived, she stayed in the driveway for a moment to pick up the mail. Afterwards, she proceeded to the garage, opened the door, drove inside, and closed it, making sure it was properly sealed. The day wasn't like any other. When Kenyon got home around 8:30 p.m., he opened the garage door and was met with a horrific sight. His pregnant wife, Avis, was lying lifeless in a pool of her own blood. Flooded with emotions, he rushed to her side, calling her name and kissing her, hoping for some sign of life. In a frantic panic, he raced into the living room, perhaps searching for any clues, trying to find the culprit. But then, Kenyon did something strange. Instead of immediately calling 911 to report what had happened, he ran to his neighbors' homes, banging on their doors, desperately trying to draw attention. His behavior raised suspicions. Something didn't seem right. One of the neighbors, hearing the frantic banging, picked up the phone and initially called 911 to report a noise complaint. But when she realized it was their neighbor, she grew concerned. The woman immediately asked her husband to go check on what was happening. The husband, sensing something was wrong, told his wife to call the police and report the situation. As the wife relayed the dispatch officer's instructions, Kenyon ran back to the house to stay by his pregnant wife's side, anxiously awaiting the arrival of the police. The situation was quickly escalating, but his strange behavior was already raising red flags. Kenyon called Deborah around 8:31 p.m., trying to sound calm. He asked if she had heard from Avis, saying she wasn't picking up her phone. Deborah hadn't, and the call ended with no clear concern, but just 15 minutes later at 8:45 p.m., Kenyon called again, this time screaming in panic. He told Deborah that she and Frederick needed to get to Ridgeland immediately. Something terrible had happened to Avis. Frederina, overhearing the call, rushed to her mom and asked what was going on. Deborah, shaken, handed the phone over. Kenyon was still frantic, repeating the same thing. Something bad had happened, but no clear details. Panic began to fill the house. When they arrived, they expected to see the house glowing with the Christmas lights they had helped hang just days earlier, but instead, they were met with flashing police lights, patrol cars everywhere, and yellow tape wrapped around the home like a warning. At that moment, Frederick knew this wasn't just a miscarriage or a medical emergency. It was something far worse. Frederina rushed over to Kenyon, desperate for answers, but he stood frozen, unable to speak. Then a coroner approached the family. His face heavy with sorrow, he looked at them and quietly delivered the devastating news. Their daughter, Avis, was deceased, and she had been brutally murdered.
My first emotion was, who would do this? Why would you kill a pregnant lady?
I said, who would shoot Avis? Everybody loved Avis. Avis don't bother nobody.
Investigators arrived at the scene at 8:46 p.m. and were met with a horrifying sight. Avis had suffered 4 fatal gunshot wounds. A 5th bullet had missed her and struck the garage door. On top of that, she had several stab wounds and her neck had been slit. It was clear this wasn't just a shooting. It was a brutal personal attack. The weapon used was a .36 caliber revolver. As they continued investigating, detectives noticed signs of a break-in. The house had been ransacked, but strangely nothing was stolen. It looked like someone had tried to make it seem like a burglary, but to the police, it already felt staged.
Electronics have been turned over and dressers have been emptied out.
With so many red flags, the police had no choice but to bring Kenyon in for questioning. A men's size 8 shoe print was found on the shattered glass. There were also bloodstains on his clothes, and he had been found right there at the scene of the crime. When asked where he was at the time of the murder, Kenyon told investigators he had gone to basketball practice. Afterward, he said, he picked up groceries and dropped them off at a colleague's house, someone named Carla Hughes. Then he claimed he went back. When the police asked Kenyon why he didn't call 911 the moment he saw Avis lying in a pool of blood, his answer stunned everyone. He claimed he didn't have enough credit on his phone because it was roaming. Yet somehow he had enough credit to call other people, including Carla Hughes. Even more disturbing, Kenyon showed almost no emotion. He was calm. Too calm for someone who had just lost his pregnant fiancée in such a brutal way. When officers read him his Miranda rights, he immediately stopped talking and asked for a lawyer. Feeling offended that he was being treated like a suspect, Kenyon lashed out at investigators. Then, without much of a word, he packed his things and moved back in with his family. His teaching duties were handed over to someone else, and suddenly, the perfect image he had built began to crack. The investigation pressed on, and detectives decided to follow up on Kenyon's alibi. They went to his school to verify his story, but what they uncovered was far more shocking than expected. It turned out that Kenyon was hiding a secret affair with a woman named Carla Hughes. Kenyon had been living a double life, and now the second life he tried to keep hidden was unraveling right before his eyes. Carla Hughes was a 25-year-old teacher from Greenville, Mississippi. On paper, she seemed like the kind of woman any parent would be proud of. Educated, driven, and well-liked. She taught middle school and was pursuing a graduate degree in education, and had built a reputation for being warm, polished, and ambitious. Carla had recently moved to Ridgeland after landing a teaching job at Chastain Middle School, the same school where Kenyon Pittman worked. From the moment she arrived, she stood out. Students adored her and staff respected her. But one connection at Chastain quickly deepened beyond the professional: her bond with Kenyon. To many, Carla was a rising star. But behind the charm and ambition, another side of her began to surface, one fueled by secrecy and obsession. While she projected confidence and stability, there were signs of something more volatile beneath the surface. Carla wasn't just a colleague of Kenyon. They traveled out of town together, and she'd stop by the restaurant where he was a bartender. Their closeness didn't go unnoticed. What made it worse, Kenyon wasn't hiding his actions, despite being in a committed relationship with a pregnant woman. In fact, Carla wasn't the only one. Kenyon was also reportedly involved with Bridget, a mother of one of his students. To everyone who thought he was the perfect partner to Avis, the truth was gut-wrenching. Kenyon was living a double life, and when her parents discovered it, they were devastated. But this revelation only meant one thing: Carla would need to be invited for questioning. When she was invited to the police station and was interrogated, she narrated the fact that Kenyon came to put the groceries at her house and later picked it up. When Kenyon got home, he equally called her to inform her of Avis's death, beckoning her to come stay with him, but she didn't go after telling her mom about it. Initially, Carla Hughes denied ever having a romantic relationship with Kenyon, but under pressure, she eventually admitted that they had been sexually involved. Still, she firmly denied having any knowledge or involvement in Avis's death. Her story was shaky, and the timelines weren't adding up, but there was no hard evidence. Yet. Then came the turning point. Carla's cousin, Patrick Hughes, and her uncle came forward with something shocking. They told police they had given Carla a gun, a .38 caliber revolver. It was the same kind of gun used in Avis's murder, but what really made alarms go off? They had given her the gun fully loaded. When she gave it back, it was empty. The police took this very seriously. They got a warrant and searched Carla's house. What they found next shook everyone. First, they discovered a pair of shoes. At first, they looked normal, but when investigators compared them to the shoe print found at the crime scene, it was a perfect match. Same sole, same size, same pattern. Then came the biggest shock of all. On the shoes were tiny spots, barely visible, but when tested in the lab, the results were clear. It was blood, and not just any blood. It was Avis's blood. The pieces were coming together. Carla's story was starting to fall apart, and the truth was darker than anyone had imagined. The news spread quickly, and it shocked everyone who knew Carla. How could the sweet, accomplished, and well-loved woman they all knew possibly be involved in something so horrific? It was hard to reconcile the image of the bright, compassionate teacher with the cold reality of what had happened.
Think of a case where the death penalty would be more appropriate than these facts. You had a lady who was doing nothing more than coming home from work. She was minding her own business, going to her house, and on top of that, she was 5 months pregnant. Then you have someone who broke into the house, staged a burglary in an attempt to cover up the death of Avis Banks, and then shot and killed Avis Banks as she gets out of her car. And if that's not enough, she takes a knife and she stabs her and slashes her.
As the investigation moved forward, everything started to make sense. The evidence was clear. The gun, the shoes, the blood. It all pointed to Carla. Once the lab results were confirmed, the police made their move. Carla was arrested. In Mississippi, the law is clear. Killing a pregnant woman counts as taking 2 lives. What Carla faced now was serious. The woman once seen as a bright, caring teacher was now behind bars, accused of a cold and violent crime. The town was stunned. Her future, once so full of promise, was now filled with questions, fear, and the shadow of a life-changing charge. Carla's obsession with Kenyon had gone too far. She wasn't just in love, she was consumed. She told her family and friends that he was her future husband, truly believing he would one day be hers. But everything changed the moment Avis entered the picture, carrying Kenyon's child. That dream Carla held onto so tightly suddenly began to fall apart. Then came the courtroom bombshell. During the hearing, Kenyon took the stand and made a shocking confession. He admitted he had tried to break things off with Carla, but not fully. He had strung her along, saying just enough to keep her hoping. His words hit hard. He said he was partly to blame and that his actions may have pushed Carla over the edge. The image of a love triangle turned darker. Kenyon's lies and mixed signals painted a painful picture, one where heartbreak turned deadly. But the courtroom still didn't have all the answers. Carla's lawyer, Johnny Walls, begged her to speak up. He wanted her to tell the full truth, to reveal if Kenyon had a deeper role. Again and again he urged her to come clean, but Carla stayed silent. She refused to share what really happened that night. What followed was 3 years of pain, waiting, and court battles. Finally, the truth came out. Carla had killed Avis in a desperate attempt to hold on to Kenyon. She had lost so much in her past. Love, family, a child. When she saw Avis living the life she wanted, she broke down. Her past heartbreak and fear of being abandoned again pushed her to do the unthinkable. In Carla's eyes, Avis was standing in the way of the future which she believed was hers. In the end, justice caught up with her. Carla was sentenced to death, but later that sentence was changed to life in prison without parole for both Avis and the unborn child she carried.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Carla Hughes, guilty of capital murder as charged in count 1 of the indictment. Relative to count 2, the verdict is, we, the jury, find the defendant, Carla Hughes, guilty of capital murder as charged in count 2 of the indictment.
His family visibly moved. They broke down in tears. Overwhelmed with emotion, Avis Banks' mother collapsed, walking out of the courtroom.
Feel, can't describe it. Feel different, energetic, don't have no pressure on me,
If you could speak to Avis right now, what would you tell her about this process finally being over and her killer being brought to justice?
She did it. That was her. That was her doing, her and God.
The case closed a dark and heartbreaking chapter, one that left scars on everyone it touched. Kenyon, devastated by the events and the consequences of his actions, decided to leave the area. He changed his name, hoping for a fresh start, and eventually remarried. Kenyon went on to open an herbal center, fulfilling his dream of helping others with natural healing, despite the dark past that would always linger behind him. Carla, on the other hand, had destroyed her life in a single moment of jealousy and obsession, ending the life of an innocent pregnant woman. Her family was devastated by the turn of events, struggling to reconcile the bright, ambitious young woman they knew with the criminal she had become. Carla let envy cloud her judgment, making choices that would not only cost her future, but also the future of an unborn child and her family. This tragic story serves as a powerful reminder. The consequences of infidelity and dishonesty are far-reaching, often affecting not just those directly involved, but others around them in ways we can't foresee. A single, reckless decision can change everything forever. At the end of the day, Kenyon's failure to be honest and respectful of both women and Carla's overwhelming obsession and jealousy are the key factors that led to this tragic event. Avis, as an innocent bystander, suffered because of the choices made by those around her. The tragic irony is that the person who had the least fault, Avis, ended up paying the highest price. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this in the comments section below. See you in the next video.